Welcome back to Gearhead Geeks, where today we are going to be putting this beauty, which is a supercharger gear, and a new supercharger chain, cam timing chain, and we're just going to go look through everything else and make sure it's all good. The reason we're doing this is the supercharger gear will help with altitude. The H2 is just hairy at sea level. It's almost uncontrollable. At altitude, it suffers like every other bike. It isn't as powerful. So I live at a fairly high altitude, and almost everywhere I ride can go up to 10,000 feet almost. Well, 8,000 feet. And it is just, it loses power. So I'd like to have something to get my power back a little bit. Like I say, 80% where I ride is 4,000 feet and above. So anyway, we're going to be changing that supercharger gear. The bike has got 76,000 miles on it, so it would be a good time while we're in there to change the cam timing chain and the supercharger chain. Why not? We're there. I've got them. We'll just do it. Now's a good time to do it. So we will get to it. Screw down here. The big one's out. So now what will happen is pull this loose, and there's a hose that hooks onto the radiator. See if I can get it out of there without making a mess. Okay, and here it comes. Good. And then we kind of leave this upright because it's full of coolant. And we'll just put it here for safekeeping. Okay. Now we're actually going to pull this bottom cover off, which is relatively simple. Again, 3 millimeter screws that cover it. So we're going to take all of these guys. So our next trick is we need to drain the oil. And we will gently pop this loose. Okay. Try to do things without making a big mess. And that oil is nice and clean. It just got changed recently anyway. And we'll let that drain down a bit. And we can start to go back over to the other side and begin removing the case. And this is not a big operation. It's relatively simple. There's a bracket on the bottom here, which we have to remember. And then everything else, and there's a bracket up top. And other than that, they're just plain old 5 millimeter hex head, 6 millimeter bolts. So let's get the brackets off first. Okay, so now our cover's ready to come off, and as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. It just pops right off. Doesn't want to hang on. You don't have to beat on it or anything. And the gasket stayed there, And as you can see, just as clean and as beautiful as anything. Now, we can look back in here. We can see our supercharger chain, and then here we have our cam timing chain. And we're going to be replacing both of those. We also are going to be, as soon as the oil drains, we'll be removing the clutch, which is a fairly straightforward operation. And that will give us access to the supercharger gear, and that's basically behind here. And we can then go on ahead and we'll remove the cams when we're ready to replace this chain. But we're going to deal with the supercharger first. The coolest part about this whole thing is this clutch. This clutch is an assist and slipper. And what that means is it has it has only 3 fairly light springs. I'm going to pull these out a little bit more evenly. Oops, my hand's caught. Let's see if I can't get that to uncatch. There we go. The glove catches a little bit, so we'll just... And these springs are decidedly light. They're long, so the tension doesn't get relaxed in them very easily, but they're very, very gentle, I guess. They don't have a lot of spring tension. And the reason for that is because they assist. Get these all the way out. There's a mechanism in the pressure plate so that when the engine is driving it, it drives the clutch plates together. And then it's a slipper clutch, so if there's too much pressure moving back, and as you can see, these springs are they're not real heavy, and there's only 3 of them, and the pressure plate is basically got these grooves in it. So what ends up happening is when the engine is going forward, it pulls tight here, and it pulls the clutch together. And then when you back off, it pushes them apart against this surface. And as you can see, there's very little wear in here. And we've got some bearings in here. We've got the clutch pusher. So we'll put that all right here. And we can set this down here. And now there's a big nut here. And we'll take out a clutch plate. And look at these clutch plates. They're like brand spanking new after 70,000 miles. It's just amazing how well engineered this bike is. It truly is. And as you can see, this last plate goes in a little bit differently than the others. The others are put in one way, and see there's a little mark on this plate. But it is truly a really remarkable clutch. Okay, and we can lay this like this, and I'm going to move this down a little bit. I think I'll lay these clutch plates down on this. So we'll start from the front and work our way back. Now, it's because of the hub in here, it's a little hard to get at all these plates, but we can do that. We'll just, since we're here, we'll be looking at the wear. And again, these plates are almost like brand new. Even a lot of times when you have a clutch that's mixed with engine oil, and when you drain everything, you can kind of smell the clutch material. And funny, in the H2, you don't get that much. And one of the reasons is because of the quick shifter. Now, I think, well, what does that have to do with it? Well, what ends up happening is the quick shifter negates having to use the clutch when you shift. And just let me interject. This is the back plate. It's a little bit skinnier also. So the back plate and the front plate are skinny, and the other ones are fat. So anyway, there's quite a few clutch plates on that. And then once we get to this point, this is pretty much a standard old clutch. There's nothing too special about it. We're going to remove this with an impact, and everything is so super tight. It's just like brand new in there. Very, very well engineered. This whole thing is just, it amazes you sometimes how well it's engineered. Okay, so the first thing I need to do here, that I'd like to do, well, we'll just let this drain a little bit. We will get the clutch off. And I think that's a 27 millimeter socket. That's just my guess. Let's see how well we came up with that. And it's a 27 millimeter socket. Beautiful. Okay, and what we will do is close this drawer. We have, this is a genuine Kawasaki clutch holding tool. Believe it or not, brought back in the 70s, and it was made in the USA. Very cool. Okay, so now we'll grab it. The big impact, and we can get this clutch holding tool into position. Let me get it pretty much 180 degrees. And that's pretty close. And it's just holding on to it. It's loose. Hold on to this. Get a 27 on there. And we'll give it a crank. And off it comes. All right. There's the nut. Get this out of the way. Off to the side. And we will put that with everything else. Now this comes off. This is just standard clutch stuff. Okay. And remember, we have a washer. Now there's a spring in the basket. We'll leave that right there. And let me get this. Let me just leave that just like it is. And I'll just move this off to the side. Good. Okay, now the basket should just come off like a normal clutch. And it does. Nothing special. No special washers in there. There's a roller bearing back in here with a spacer behind it. And we can leave that like that. And then there is a driving, this drives the oil pump. So this guy here can stay on there at the moment. I think we can just leave that just like that. And we're going to be replacing this chain, which is really nice and tight. Probably doesn't really need replacing, but you know, it is what it is. Okay, so now we're ready to remove the supercharger gear. And this one will probably do the trick. And it does. Yeah, this is a nice, powerful CP. It's an original USA made one. And let's see if we can get this gear off of here without too much issue. Well, let's see here. Could be that we need to get it kind of past the guides. So what we'll do here is the guide right here, and we just need to push the See, it's kind of caught on the guide at the moment. I need to get the chain away from the guide. We may have to remove the guide to do this. I'm not sure. Never done it before. Looks like we're past the guide. No, we're past the guide, I think. And we got it. So here is the supercharger gear that we removed. And here is the supercharger gear we're putting in. And it's just slightly smaller. Just by one tooth. Here's the chain. And now we'll get our new chain. And this is our old stuff. And we got a new chain coming. And our chain is sitting. This is it. And again, that chain had nothing wrong with it at all. Probably just fine. But we're here. Got a new one in hand. And why not? Okay. Here's on your chain. Wrapped up by Kawasaki. And this is the same guy, right? Yep, because this would no way work on a... wouldn't they work on the cam chain, so must be it. So we'll get this chain started around the supercharger drive gear, which is now started. Okay, it's basically in there. And what we do is take our supercharger gear, put it in there, and we'll hopefully get this guy in there. So let's get a super. It's just a little fiddly. Let's get this guy in first. Get this guy up and over and get the chain around it. All right, now our chain is basically in place, and it popped right on, and yep, in about the same place. Okay, so new supercharger gear, new supercharger chain. So the next thing we have to do is, and this is pretty critical. They tell you to use a new supercharger, a new bolt in this. So we ordered a new bolt. We have one. But one of the things that we really want to do is make sure that it's clean inside our threads over there. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just use a little brake part cleaner. No, let's just use some electronic cleaner. That'll work well. It'll clean this out. So we're going to clean out these threads. Okay, and we'll let that dry a little bit. Okay, and we have in our part bin here, we should have a new bolt somewhere in this, and a new bolt. Pull that loose, and it's already got some red Loctite on it, but we'll put a little more in there. It's already got some thread locker on it, but we'll give it another drip anyway. Make sure this comes out properly. Yep. Now this thread locker I'm using, I was watching the Torque Test channel, and they did a test on thread locker, and this stuff here actually worked better than Loctite. And Loctite is the standard, as we well know. comes. And what's nice about this stuff, it's a little more of a gel than standard Loctite, which is nice. Okay, so we're going to get this and just let this sit right here for now. And we will go on ahead and dry this cavity. Okay, so then what we'll be doing is we're just going to put a little drip of Loctite on this. Well, before we do that, let's get the washer. Put this here. Get this washer loose. Get it cleaned up. We will put it on. And we will get a drip of Loctite on it. Just enough so it's a little liquid. Just a drop. Okay. And we will screw this guy in. And now we can run this guy down. And that thread locker that they put on there is really good stuff. So okay, and now the supercharger bolt, the bolt on the supercharger calls for 18 foot-pounds of torque. So we are going to jam a screwdriver into the chain so it can't turn. And we'll hook the torque wrench up here. Straight in so there's no real strain on anything. And we will torque it to 18 foot-pounds. 15, 16, 17, and 18. And that was right where we need to be. Now, we are all torqued down. The next thing we have to do is, everything is in place. We're torqued down. We got our bolts in. So now we need to reset the tensioner. And like I said, this is not the most fun thing in the world to do. Let me get this. So what has to happen here is this plunger needs to go down and let the clip rest inside of this little groove. And this clip just sits in there, and it will once it's in place, it will hold on to it just enough so that the pressure from the pressure from the oil pump will push against it and pop the clip loose. So let's see if we can get this thing to even start to move. It is. So I've spent the last few minutes not only getting this surface clean. If we can look inside here and see. I'll wave around in there. But not just clean, but perfectly clean. And brand new gasket. And we are going to go on ahead and put in our supercharger chain tensioner. Thing out of the way. Oh, and before I forget, this is what it looks like with the clip holding into the groove. It is just barely holding onto it. You got to kind of squeeze the clip together. And the secret to pushing it down is to twist it back and forth. You can put a lot of pressure on it, but that doesn't do you any good. The twisting motion seems to get it so that the oil gets out of the way and you can actually make the thing so it's not pushing so hard against you. And I'm going to have to clean this up a little bit because just moving it around, I got a little oil on it, and I don't want any oil on it. I want it completely dry. So let me take this gasket here on here again. Okay, and it fits just perfectly. And we are now going to put this back on the way it was. I'll move things out of the way this time. And it fits precisely in there. Now, take the two bolts. And we will get things started and snug down. And these get a little bit of red Loctite. So I will clean these and get some red Loctite on. And just a drop. That's nice. Okay, and I'll get this bolt started. If I can. There it goes. And I will run it down a little bit. And I'll pull the other one out and put some red Loctite on it. I just wanted to get it in place. Okay. And these will get torqued down to, I believe it's 87 inch-pounds. We'll make sure of that. Get this clean. Wipe it off with a clean rag. Little thread locker, just a tiny bit. Get it flowing. There we go. Just enough. That's about what it had on it from the factory. Okay. Okay, and now we will go set up .89 inch-pounds. So let's go get ourselves an inch-pound torque wrench over here. Well, we just so happen to have one right here. And it's got a nice little tiny 3/8 head on it. And we will set it up to 89 inch-pounds, which 90, 88, 89 inch-pounds. Okay, so now we can take our 5mm, I believe it's over here, you can find it, I feel 5mm driver, that's a 5, put it on there, and £89 inch. 89 inch. So, done. Okay, so we'll put our torque wrenches off to the side as we use them. Okay, put this away. So now, our supercharger has been properly torqued. Our tensioner is properly torqued. It will pop into place as soon as it builds oil pressure. So now the next thing to do here is just to put back on our cover. So we'll clean anything up that's in there. Make sure there's nothing sitting around in there. And cover all nice and clean. We want zero dirt, zero anything on this. Make sure our O-ring is in place. Put it so that the lettering is facing up, and everything seems to be lined up, and just kind of push it in. Okay, and we have a couple of bolts right here. And these are also 89 inch-pounds, so we will torque those properly as soon as we get started. We'll run them down. Okay, put it back on our torque wrench. And 89 inch-pounds. Done. And we're good to go. So now, again, everything is in place. Everything is ready to go. So now, we can go on ahead and put our clutch back together, which is a fairly simple operation. Put in this bearing. Now, this oil pump drive will need to index into the back of the hub, but that's fairly simple. There's two holes right here, and we get it close to being lined up, and we can turn the oil pump back and forth until it drops in, and now it's all in there and it's ready to go. Okay, there's a big washer. It goes on here, and we can put our clutch hub back on. It doesn't go on in any particular direction. And now we can get our clutch nut back on. Wherever we put it, there it is. Now, what they do from the factory is they bend this down just a little tiny bit so that it grabs. And we are going to just make sure that it's in good shape. So the way to do that is we'll just grab a punch. I'll grab a punch, and we'll just give it a bit of a blow here, just to make sure that it's pushes up against the threads. This is not a big deal. Let me put it in our vise here and just kind of hold it, and we'll give it a tap. It's not very much. Okay, so now we'll just spin this guy back on, and he is going to get torqued to, I believe, and see that little indentation is holding up against the threads, and it gets torqued to 95 foot-pounds. So we need to set up our torque wrench. To 95 foot-pounds. I don't want inch-pounds. I want inch-pounds. Foot-pounds. Let's see, 95. Okay. We're set to 95 foot-pounds. What we need to do is get a 3/8 to 1/2 inch adapter so we can put our 30mm socket on there. And everything is so slippery at the moment, I can't get anything off. Try this. There we go. Okay, let me go find an adapter. And we have one right here. And we have a 27mm socket, and we will get our clutch basket holder back on. There it is. And it's quite a few foot-pounds, so it's going to take a little bit of doing to get this, get ourselves in a good position to be able to do this. We'll just kind of run this up against the goes. Yep, 95 foot-pounds. Nice, good. So that's all done. While off camera, I did measure the clutch stack, and it is within spec. So we can start by putting the plates back in. And you just got to get them lined up properly. There's one. And we'll just, and look at these things. I mean, still have the hatching patterns on them. They are just gorgeous. And just put one in at a time. Thing. One actually fits on the this actual plate fits on the pressure plate. So you put that in, and then this one can go here, and then this one fits in the pressure plate, so it's a little bit different. And then I don't believe that there's any special way this goes on. You just kind of, I don't see any markings of any form. So you just put this on here. Now this guy is going to go into, there is a mark on this disc right here, and you can see this goes here, and we will rotate this guy back to its natural home. Just takes a little bit of, and then he's going to go, he's offset a little bit. He doesn't go exactly. We'll get it. I just got to get this to move around a little bit so we can fit it. There it goes. There it goes. Come on, go on in there. Now what's happened here is it's just pushing up against the hydraulics in the clutch. So we're all put back together. The hydraulic clutch has just bled down a little bit. So now you can see this guy moves back and forth. This is lined up with this. This is lined up there. Actually, yep, that's all lined up the way it should be. Okay, and now we can go on ahead and put these three springs back on and get it started so that we don't have to hold this whole thing together. And all three of those start. And let's get this clutch to push back in a little bit. Get a little tension on it. And that'll stop that mess. And that should be just enough to get it going. Good. So now we can close this up so our blue Loctite. Then we're going to take our 10mm socket and we'll just wind these in evenly. Okay, good. And again, more with the 89 foot-pounds. Inch-pounds, excuse me. And very good. So those are our clutch. It's all back together. We can now see it move in and out when I use the, and we are in good shape. Perfect. So the clutch is back on. The supercharger chain is back on. Everything is clean and nice the way it should be. There's no leftover gasket material. And not one little problem other than having to work a little bit at getting that adjuster put back in. So now we're ready to put the cover back on, clutch cover. So let's clean up our gasket surface very carefully. And I'm just using a little acetone on a rag. Make sure that every little bit is as clean as possible. And we might have to do just a little bit of scraping here. There's just a little bit of that gasket left. And we got a little oil here, which we don't want on our gasket. Soak that up. And continue cleaning. And what we'll use here, see, you can see a little bit of the silicone, RTV, that we use. And so we're just going to use a plastic scraper, because that's all we ever use on these. We're not here to destroy anything. And there's just a slight amount of, looks like a graphite residue on there. And a little more of that graphite residue. And there's a little bit of sealer around the grommet. I'll get that all cleaned up. And a bit more of that residue. Let me get all of this off of here. All right, one more lap with some acetone. Sitting over here is getting the same treatment. I'm going to mop up a little oil in here so it's not dripping down on our gasket surfaces. And there's not much left, just a little bit of oil. I should have dumped it out a while back, but I didn't. Okay, I think that's almost got it. Good enough. It won't be leaking out. Shouldn't be anyway. Okay, so now, again with the acetone on the surface, the surface seems to be a little less prone. There's a little bit of paint, kind of an overspray when they sprayed the cover, but everything is nice and clean and beautiful. And now, with that, we need to, first of all, let's find all the bolts for it, which are fitting right here. Now we've got a brand new gasket. We probably didn't even really need to use it, but we've got one. So it is what it is. And it looks like it goes on this way. And there's really no dowel pins to hold this in. So what we're going to do here is, since this guy goes this way, this guy will go like this. And what we'll do is, I believe, we'll just grab one of these. There's a bracket that goes in on the top here. This is the bottom one. This is the other bottom one. And we've got two of these, and this only fits in one way, I think. So it's like right here. If I remember right, that looks right. Okay. And that'll help hold our gasket in place. So here we go. Let's just get a couple bolts in this bad boy. So then we can get the rest of them in. We'll use this guy here, and that will help us align the gasket. There's really no dowel pins in this, so we'll just use the bolts. These get torqued to 106 inch-pounds. Okay, so this is our other bottom one. Let's see what we have here. This one goes like that. All three of those. Cool. One. And 3. Okay. Seems like everything's lining up nicely. Okay. And we can continue on. This. Another one here. Get these guys going. Now there's going to be 2 at the bottom that will encapsulate our that encapsulates the oxygen sensor wire. There's one. Started. Okay, and the last 2 go in here. And to make this easy, we'll just go run these cookies down. Okay, everybody gets in place. Okay, so I applied some RTV at the grommet and where the cases come together, and they specify that this particular bolt right here needs a bit of Loctite, so there's some Loctite on that bolt. And now we need to torque these all down to 106 inch-pounds, and there is a specified order, so we will follow that order. And they say, so now we'll just take this and we will start, this being number 1 right here. One and 2. Two, 3, 4, 5, 15, 16, and 17. And we're done. So that is all cleaned up and nice, torqued properly in the right sequence, and it is ready for some oil. In essence, I got a little scratching going on there. Good. So the next thing we'll do is we will put on the tank. Okay, so here it is. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we're going to need to get our fuel line back on. We have our line, and it just gets pushed on, and then the clip goes in. Done. So that's it. Now there's a wire comes up here that stays there. And so what we need to do, get our tank in position, which it pretty much is. Okay. And we'll get the battery kind of out of the way here. Now it can slip on past. And there's a wire. I've got to make sure that it's out. Okay, so everything seems to be in position. We just need to get this to go down a little bit. Okay, and it's kind of hung on the battery. Let me lift up the front. I need to get this so it doesn't scratch anything. Okay, so now that's in place. Our tank is in place in the front. We got a couple of bolts to put in the front that hold the steering dampener down. First, move the tank around a little bit, and we'll get those started. Screw those down in a bit to get these two guys started, and with the washers on them. And we may have to move things around, but they're basically in place. Now, the easiest thing to use is 5mm, and we'll just get these guys lined up. And going on in. And we know we're not doing anything bad. And you can just put them in one finger or just spin them in. Okay, now we'll get the front two in. These are usually not too hard. And I think we're closing in on it. Maybe, maybe not. There it goes. There's one. And we'll get the other one. Just have to kind of push on it a little bit. I need to go to the other side. Get my hand in there. Actually, there's two hoses that need to get hooked up. Pressure going on. They just vent to atmosphere at this point, like a non-California bike, which this really is. In Nevada, they sell you California bikes for whatever stupid reason. Okay, so now let's see if we can get this other bracket into place. Looks like it's better now. Yeah, it is. Okay, good. So now we will continue on tightening down the tank. Okay, and we'll get all these four guys tight. Okay, all those are tight. Now the next thing is there's a cable here somewhere that plugs in for our fuel pump and just for our fuel pump. I wish this thing had a gas gauge. It does have a gas gauge, but it's just basically reserve. Okay, the tank is in. Everything is cleaned up, get our little gas spill done. We got some cleaning we're going to do before we do anything, but let's take a look at the air filter while we're here. I've already removed the tube for access to work on this other side. I just didn't show that. And there's a couple bolts that hold on this cover. Or 3 bolts that hold this cover on. There's 2 of the bolts on the actual intake. Okay, so we have seen the inside of our air intake. And look in here, look at the crud and the crust on this. Now there's one of the things, now this is that Sprint filter I was talking about. And this thing is, again, truly magnificent. If I can get it out of there. It is just full of bees and all sorts of stuff at the moment. Well, maybe. Let me get a hook on it. There we go. Okay, so now, take a look at that. Look how nasty and all the stuff that's in there. And look inside here. It is just gorgeous. Not a speck of dirt, nothing. And we're just gonna blow this out a little bit because that's all you do to these filters. You don't have to do any special cleaning or anything. Now there's a little bit of oil that ends up inside of this, and that's because the supercharger is pulling so much air that it creates a vacuum in the crankcase. And that's okay. Well, we're going to have the bee population out of this thing. I mean, this thing is just nasty, and it will be, and it just filters just fine. It's just, and this is all you do. This is all they tell you to do. Take a little air, flow through it. I guess it could. We got a lot of bugs in there. We'll get those out. And good enough. And the filter is serviced. I'm going to wipe out some of the oil and whatnot in here. And again, this is all just nothing but clean and beautiful. It's just got a little oil on it. Okay, so that just about wraps it up for the supercharger gear, supercharger chain, the cam chiming chain, and the assembly and disassembly of the clutch, and all the other parts. The only thing really left to do here is to put on the outer fairings, and I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning before I do that. And that, you don't need to see that in the video. That's a little bit boring. So, again, thanks for watching this video. If you like what you see and you want to see more, hit the subscribe and like so that we can do more of these and see if they're appreciated. We're going to be doing more different projects, not just working on H2. We have some restoration projects. We can restore screws, nuts, bolts. Yeah, we do all our own painting, a lot of times with just the spray can, and we get good results. So stay tuned. Thanks.